Good afternoon and welcome to this Euractiv debate supported by Giga Europe on the green ICT. How can the digital sector accelerate the green transition? I'm Brian Maguire, be with you for this program today. You can follow the discussion at hashtag EA Debates. Our social media team will interact with you there, so please use the hashtag for your comments and they'll bring some of those too. And you can use the Slido on the right of your screen to send us questions and comments. I will bring those throughout the course of the program, not just at the end, so you can send them now. And the sooner you do, the sooner we can put those to our excellent panel today. According to the March BEREC draft report on sustainability in the connectivity sector, the digital sector's impact is 2 to 4% compared to other industries. Some industry stakeholders within the connectivity sector are not content with these statistics and have announced their own voluntary commitments to meeting ambitious goals by joining the European Green and Digital Coalition. Companies in the connectivity sector claim they want to make responsible and sustainable investments. For them, one of the key challenges will be to balance their role as enablers of green and digital transformations with the operational resources required to implement their own sustainability efforts. While several of the EU's Green Deal and Digital Decade 2030 targets require upgraded infrastructure and increased private investment, connectivity operators in this consistently evolving sector must contend with increased demand. They want to see predictable and harmonized regulations to facilitate sustainable and responsible investments, which ultimately benefit consumers. In this debate, we'll discuss how, through collective action and multi-stakeholder approaches, Europe can enable a green and digital transition that works for all. Now, joining us today, we have a really stellar panel, starting with Daniel Mess, a member of cabinet of Franz Timmermans, the Executive Vice President of the European Green Deal, the European Commission. Elias Jakovidis, Advisor for Digital Aspects of Green Transformation, DG Connect, the European Commission. David Cormand, a member of the European Parliament and member of the IMCO Committee, Rapporteur on Towards a More Sustainable Single Market for Business and Consumers. Ivan Stefanic, a member of the IMCO Committee and Shadow Rapporteur on 2030 Policy Programme, Path to the Digital Decade. Anne-Marie Sipkes, Chair of BEREC, is also with us, and Veronica Wilms, Secretary General of SME United, and Molly Bruce, Vice President of Corporate Responsibility and ESG Communications at Liberty Global. Great to have all of you with us today. Good to see we made some progress towards gender equality on the panel also today. And I'm going to give each of you 60 seconds or so just to kick off with your headline message. Then we'll start the conversation, and I encourage your audience again, send in your questions on the Slido and we'll bring those to the panel. Daniel, kick off with you, 60 seconds.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And this is a very timely topic, I think, because in the current energy situation that we're in, extraordinary, there's no other choice. We believe ICT must go green. And with that, I mean a few things. ICT must really help us to actually make the smartest use of energy that we can, especially now. Of course, it needs to happen in a fair way, that everybody has access to that. And it also needs to work indeed on its footprint itself, so go green itself. On the energy grid, we have massive new ambitions to ramp up renewable production. And if you don't want to put wind parks and solar panels everywhere, you need to make the smartest use of the space that you have. And that really involves digital technology helping us to make the grid smart, and also the consumer giving them smart metering and smart charging solutions. So to just give you a few examples, this cannot only be about the cables and the copper. The gigabits and the digits also must come in, and we are extremely serious about that. We will take, I think the decisive action is needed to enable that, and later this year we'll come with an action plan. Needs to happen in a fair way, so that also from the countryside to the cities, from SME to big companies, from richer to poorer households, everybody has access. But I want to add one element of fairness to this debate, and that is fair access to the energy and fair access to the energy grid. And there we really have to have a serious conversation about the footprint of digital technology itself. If you look at the Netherlands, there have been quite some discussions on the place of data centers, hyperscale data centers on the grid. The result of the energy capacity that it needed was that households and businesses needed to be put in the queue to get connected to the energy grid itself. And the revolt in one town, Zeewolde, became so big that the data center was put on hold. And that is now really becoming, especially in this energy situation, quite a serious discussion to have, given the fact that by 2030, the ICT systems will take 20%, almost 20% of our electricity, it's calculated, or will be the top 3 buyer of renewables. And we need to spread that energy in a fair manner. There's no need to panic. That's my message also, because I don't want to sound too dark here. There's no need to panic. There's just a need to plan, because we have solutions, we believe. You can have data centers integrated into the energy system and use the excess heat to warm up households. You can indeed have solid measurements of the impact of digitization on the environment and our citizens, so that you can take informed decisions. BEREC also on the panel has also seen the issue, so there's a lot to work with. But there's my main message today, that we now really need both sides of the coin. No EU Green Deal without digital, but digital now really, especially now in this situation, must really go green itself.
Thank you, Daniel. Excellent. I wasn't going to panic, but now that you mention it, I may just do that. Elias, over to you, 60 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So digital transition and green transition are the two priorities of this commission. And Daniel just explained, and he's the representative of the green transition. The digital transition can have a conflict with that green transition. And that conflict we have already identified, and we are working on it. And that means making the data centers climate neutral, making the telecoms greener, and we will talk more about that, and making the devices more circular. I'm sure David will talk about the problem of the material efficiency in digital sector. What I would like to highlight is, how do we manage synergies of those two? It's not obvious that digitalizing energy system or agriculture will give you sustainability benefits. There is a very specific band and conditions under which you have triple win: economic, social, environmental. Those framework conditions to make sure that we have a sustainability benefits have to be developed and have to be measurable and have to be guiding both governments, policymaking, and financial institutions. This is what the Green Digital Coalition is about. And if I had to select two sectors of top priority, how to digitize energy sector so we can get more renewables in, first. Second, how to make a transition to circular economy is where digital can really show the power of decoupling our economy from ever-increasing use of natural resources. That is the power of digital that we have to tap into, making sure that we minimize the rebound effect.
Thank you, Lewis. David, over to you, 60 seconds.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Thank you for your invitation at this meeting. You hear my English is very bad because I'm French. And in France, when we go to school, nobody learns us other language. In school, we just learn everybody in the world speak French. But when we become adults, we realize it's not the case. Sorry for that. Thank you for this meeting, because I think I don't want to panic, Daniel, but like Greta Thunberg, I think we need to panic a little bit, because for the moment, the transition, the ecological transition, and the ICT, the digital transition, is presenting by the committee, by the European Union, like the same things. But in fact, it's not the same things. The ecological transition is it's a vital necessity. Digital transition is a tool. It is the first thing. Second things, for the moment, we don't make serious study about the impact of the numeric, about energy, but like Elias just said, the impact of material of the digital revolution. For the moment, this revolution is a catastrophe, ecological catastrophe, because all the object connected need a lot of things to build it. And for the moment, we haven't got standards to have circular economy with that, eco-design with that. And I'll try in English today to talking about that with you, because it's a major moment for the European Union. It is the moment, the momentum now to decide which digital revolution we want. If we make a revolution, a digital revolution like is it the situation now, digital will not a solution for the planet. It will be the contrary. It's necessary to make a good legislation in the European Union to make a sustainable digital revolution.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. Even over to you, 60 seconds.
Thank you very much, Brian, and good afternoon, everybody. From my point of view, really, digital and green transitions, they complement each other and they are very much dependent on each other. So digital transition is not possible to be achieved without green transition and vice versa. I think what is very important to find a way how to get there, and we have approved recently in the European Parliament the report which is called Path to the Digital Decade. And we described for upcoming 8 years goals in 4 main areas. So we are talking about re-education, about infrastructure, about e-government for citizens, and also what is very important, how to support business environment. So all goals should be set in line with Green Deal goals, and SME stress tests should guarantee that the national plans will be friendly also for small businesses. We shouldn't forget the fact that most jobs are created by small businesses. I have to say that European Parliament is even more ambitious than the European Commission. For example, regarding some objectives, we improved not 80%, but we put even 100% of citizens, they should use electronic ID by 2030 and etc. So also we extended support for unicorns via European Digital Innovation Hubs, and we added a new goal by 2030 that the Union should be competitive, and sustainable data cloud infrastructure should be put in place with high security and privacy standards, and should be compliant with Union's data protection rules. So all goals, I think, are very, very important in our digital transition, and there is a lot of challenges for coming years which are necessarily discussed, not only today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ivan. Anne-Marie, 60 seconds.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for already mentioning the report that we at BEREC have prepared. I think we also see that digital is a very important or crucial enabler for the green transition, but the digital sector itself should also contribute to being as green as possible. And we have started the work that landed into the report you just mentioned, asking ourselves what we as regulators can do. So what do we conclude? We concluded that the most important thing is to have a holistic data-driven approach. So what does that actually mean? Data-driven means we see that there's a lack of consistent, comparable data on what green actually is. And this is vital to make sure that all the stakeholders take the right decisions. Investors that were already mentioned, market players that want to be accountable, public authorities such as regulators that have to make a choice. Are we going to stimulate this technology or rather another? Are we going down this avenue or rather another? And the final group of stakeholders, end users. This is not just about data centers. It is not just about networks. It is also about devices. It's all three of them. And making sure you have the right data to enable people and stakeholders to take the right decisions is vital. And to achieve such a set of consistent data and consistent methodology to measure exactly where we are and where we want to be, you have to have a holistic approach, setting everyone around the table. So that is our next step as BEREC, making sure that everyone is around the table and trying to get our heads around the better data to make sure that we can decide upon the right actions in every single market that we regulate.
Anne-Marie, thank you so much. Veronique, 60 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation as well. Well, I would like to say that there will not be a transition, either digital or green, without SMEs. That has been echoed in recent weeks also by OECD and the Lisbon Council, for instance. I also appreciate that in the BEREC report there is a referral to predictable and harmonized regulations to facilitate investment. That's one of the first questions that our SMEs will also put forward. Create clear and stable objectives and rules so that they know which investments to make now to get to where they have to get, for instance, by 2030. A second point is ensuring investment capacity. Many SMEs have a negative impact from the COVID pandemic on their investment capacity, so we need to take that into account. Apart from that, we also have to ensure the necessary skills development, and as also referred to already by several speakers, the technology development. And for that, I believe that DG GROW, along with Digital SME Alliance, has launched a call in the past few days concerning green ICT solutions from SMEs to make the transition on the green and the digital side. So that's also something we are carefully monitoring. I look forward to further discussing the other topics with you.
Veronique, thank you. Molly, over to you, 60 seconds.
Thank you, Brian, and good afternoon, everyone. Coming from the perspective of a fixed and mobile connectivity provider, we see opportunity and responsibility in our role as both major operators in our markets, as well as enablers by the connectivity services we provide. Liberty Global's operations deliver a total of 85 million connections across the UK and Europe today. And as a business, we want to create impact without doing harm. We've committed to net zero targets across scopes 1 and 2 by 2030, and we are working to substantiate our scope 3 plans. We're focused on renewable energy, reducing e-waste, and creating circularity for our products. Now, as an enabler, we see connectivity as being inherently critical to a net zero future by allowing other sectors to be more resource and energy efficient, as well as supporting sustainable innovations. And this means that we invest substantially in the technologies such as fiber and 5G that enable more energy efficient use. And we invest to build ubiquitous networks so that digital innovations have the scaled access that they require. So as we look at Europe's green transition, we see it requiring 3 things: policy that stimulates technology agnostic investment and innovation, standardization, as I think was mentioned, of how we measure ESG targets, so what good looks like, and broad engagement across public and private sectors on a shared path toward common goals.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you for each of those. It's concise. And let's go. I like what Ilias pointed out in terms of the economic, social, environmental wins and how we get the guiding principles for sustainability benefit out of that as well. Ilias, let's go build on this a little bit more as well. You know, what are the guiding principles? What are the metrics that need to be taken into consideration if we're going to achieve these synergies that you mentioned?
Right. At the moment, the way we measure is very much top-down theoretical analysis, averages, what we imagine a good look, good results or the good outcomes of digitalization are. We need to start measuring the real-life pilots and real-life deployments. And that's what we set out to do with the Green Digital Coalition, to cross-fertilize this kind of a theoretical models of estimating the potential of digitalization to actually getting to measuring the real effects and learning from it. Where are we doing harm without even planning for it? Every digital solution has to be designed with the sustainability in place, so we can kind of plan on the known unknowns, but there are many unknown unknowns that we are in reality facing when we're doing precision farming pilots, or when we do connected mobility, or when we do smart cities, that need to be that we need to learn. We need to really get the data and start building it in the design and usage and guidance, how to use these solutions to get to stay in this narrow band of triple wind. And those bands the boundaries are not very obvious. They are very tricky. And that's what we're trying to do, to actually see how we can, with the real data, identify them to the end users. It can be mayors, it can be individual citizens, what actually it means to use this digital device for triple win, but it can be mainly also financial institutions, because major percentage of all the finances will go for sustainability. At the moment, digitalization is not on the menu of sustainable finance. We just got the first breakthrough with EU taxonomy, but the conditions are still very obscure. It's not robust and easy to understand condition for financial institutions to use and to be guided to finance sustainability.
Thank you. This triple win, Daniel, you said that ICT will account for 20% of electricity as well. Of itself, that sounds pretty terrible, but actually the benefits of using ICT correctly could outstrip that figure in its own right as well. So if we manage smart grids more effectively, or the homes are heated more efficiently, our cars are driven more competently as well. So where are we in terms of understanding where this synergy trade-off is, and can we measure well enough yet, or are we still some way off? Where Elias has mentioned the real-life deployment and measurement. Where do you see the picture right now? Are we going the right direction, and ICT can manage this? Daniel?
Yeah, I think that the work that Elias and his colleagues are doing on these measurements is extremely important. It really is, because this is sort of the ingredient that you need to make sure that people don't panic, and that I hopefully will be right, that if we plan right, we don't have to. So these measurements are the key. And some of them are better developed than others. So what Elias is doing is extremely important. And for us, it will actually help us to shape the political decisions that you need to take. And for that, you need to know what is really happening, and at the different levels. Because indeed, as also BEREC pointed out, you have the infrastructure, and you have the devices and the materials that are in there. We also have made proposals already on that those devices become more energy efficient. But in order to choose the right mix of political decisions, you need these data. So for me, we are on different parts of the chain in different stages. So as a whole, I think that our vision at the European Commission, at least where we're gravitating towards, is that if you have this solid and robust EU framework in place that you can measure, you can actually take decisions. And that decision doesn't have to be, don't roll out the technology, but I'm also saying to the operators here on the call, it becomes a problem for the rollout of your technology if this is left in the cloud, so to say, the footprint. Because you see that in the Netherlands, I think it's good that the accountability helps in order also for the rollout of the technology, so that you don't have to decide that you stop that, but that you can take another type of decision. And I always use the example of mobility as a service. Which is sort of this app that you can use and then choose a bike or a car or public transport to move around. Lots of people always say, well, we don't want that, to make sure that actually more people go into shared cars than the public transport. You can look at these measurements, and then you can, as a city, if you believe that something is really happening, you can take an informed decision and say, listen, I want public transport to be more of a backbone. So you can sort of take a political decision to mitigate some of these effects. So that's why it's really important. And we have to see if the EU level comes in. And then we have these parts of the chain where we already know that there are massive challenges. And that is on infrastructure like data centers. That's why we've made proposals already in our energy efficiency directive to tackle this, given the energy use that I just outlined. And I think that also in our action plan, we need to follow up with, I really believe we need an energy label also for data centers, because that does also really helps all the people to make the right choices. And on the devices, other people have come in on that already. We are really on that ball too.
Thank you. Veronique, in terms of SMEs, do you feel SMEs are sufficiently embedded in this process as well? You need dependability, you need predictability, you need some foresight as to how SMEs can plan ahead, and they don't have this capacity that large-scale businesses do in terms of investment or changing a path of direction within a reasonable time as well. And yet we're more than 90% of the European economy in terms of SMEs. So are SMEs embedded in this decision-making process, or are they participating well enough for your liking?
Well, I think that we are doing the best we can at the moment, but we have been echoing in the past few months that there needs to be a stable framework. For instance, the targets towards 2030 have to be clear now if you want to make investments to reach those targets by 2030. And I don't think that's an issue specifically for SMEs. I think that even big companies face a challenge there, because you have a certain investment time frame. If you invest now, that will have an impact on the targets you can reach by 2030, and that also has an impact on your further investment capacity in the next few years. You have to make depreciation on those investments as well. So that's a first element that I think hasn't been taken into account sufficiently, also in the policy process. A second element, and I do agree that there needs to be measurement. You need to measure and you need to have figures to know where you are going. On the other hand, a big concern we have at the moment with all the different reporting proposals that are ongoing. You have the CSRD, taxonomy has been mentioned, sustainable finance in general. Those are all additional reporting requirements that will ask a lot of time investment and development, especially from small and medium-sized companies. And that's the fear that we have, that at the moment they might invest more in the reporting than really actually making a change on the ground. So those elements for us are quite important to see how to move forward. And then in general, I believe that it was OECD who also clearly indicated that investments at the moment from member states, from OECD, target around 3% of SMEs, and the rest of the support measures are more invested into, for instance, public authorities and bigger companies. So I think there the awareness also needs to be created and raised more than we have already been able to do. That if you want to make this transition and if you want to really make a change in reality, in real life, that you will have to make a bigger investment and a bigger support for small and medium-sized enterprises.
Okay, thank you, Veronique. David, the digital revolution isn't going anywhere. It's here to stay and probably will continue to scale up as well. You mentioned the difference between the ecological necessity and the digital side being a tool which can be an enabler for this as well. If we talk about ICT and how it can help the green transition, assuming that the digital side is not going away, where do you think we're best invested in terms of our time and our policy direction as well? What helps most and achieve the green transition by using digital? David?
Thank you. It's a difficult question. I think in beginning, we need to make reflection what we really need. For the moment, the temptation is we make new infrastructure of numeric like 5G, 6G, etc., and after we look what we can do with this new infrastructure. I think it's not the good methodology. What we really need for our life. For example, about the SME, we had reports in the European Parliament about artificial intelligence, and in this report we said 75% of SME need artificial intelligence. Why? I'm not sure 75% of SME need artificial intelligence. I think we need to make the things in the good order, in the nice order. And the nice order is how can we do to have the most important sobriety. And today, the digital model is the contrary of the sobriety, is more things, more infrastructure, more connected objects, etc., etc., etc. We make with the Greens, we ordered a study about the overall impact of digital technology. In this study, we see in this study all the digital already contributes substantially has a very big impact for the environment. And with this study, we try to have some, I don't know how to say it, but index to make evaluation of the green, of the ecological impact of this kind of technology. And we said, we propose to have standards to build this connected object, to have transparency about the impact and the reparability of this object. We will make some proposition to have a digital more durable, more reutilizable, etc., etc. But for the moment, it's not the standard of the digital economy. The economic model of the digital economy is the contrary of that.
Okay, thank you, David. Anne-Marie, data-driven approach was part of your headline, and Daniel and Elias have also touched clearly on this as well. I want to bring Elias in just a moment on SMEs, but just to before that as well, data-driven approach, to link it to investment and what SMEs need as well. Do you see the metrics on the horizon that we need for this? A data-driven approach for investors, for SMEs to plan, or are we too far away from the kind of measurement of deployment that Elias said is important as well? Where are we on data-driven approach? Anne-Marie?
I think, as Molly already said, that the telco industry is already, especially vis-a-vis the financial stakeholders, reporting on a lot of issues and a lot of parameters. So I think we should really build on that, because what we do see is that, as was already pointed out, there are a lot of different demands from different stakeholders for different purposes, and that of course doesn't help. I mean, if you have to report on aspect A of your network to one party, aspect B to another, and aspect C for the next, and these are all kind of having something to do with greening your infrastructure, for example, then everybody just gets confused and nobody knows what to do. For example, when you look at the new state aid guidelines, then choosing as a state to subsidize the rollout of fiber or 5G to remote areas, there is also an aspect of looking into the most sustainable technology to be used, which is, of course, something that we would all advocate. But then you'd have to look what metrics to choose. And I think maybe there's more a tendency towards too many metrics, so that you cannot see the forest through the trees. So that is why we think it will be really good to make sure that we get all the stakeholders around the table in a couple of technical workshops to work through all these metrics to see, can we get a kind of a core set so that we all talk about the same things. And that guides all our decisions in various aspects, because I do understand that the various industries, they need to have some stable bearings to make sure that you get the right investment environment, and to get that stable a stable set of indicators, and to know that you have the same basics on which to have a discussion and a dialogue is very important. So actually, I think that we may have a bit too many data, and that it's more on streamlining them, on consistency, on aligning them. And I think alignment is more what we need.
Thank you. Elias, you wanted to remark on SMEs as well.
Yes, I just wanted to say that large companies know what to do, and they have the capacity to understand how to be more sustainable, how to measure their scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and try to really make the difference. SMEs are a bit lost because they don't have the capacity to even understand, how do I become a greener business, or how do I change my business to be circular business? And that's where ICT actually can come in. ICT can come in to organize more efficiently the buildings. They don't maybe need all these buildings. They don't need all this, transport. Maybe there is a logistical issue that ICT can help on their own footprint. But more importantly, they can rethink their business to be more circular. And I'm talking to some of the retail businesses that would try to become product as a service, where they can make money by selling the same thing second and third time if they collaborate with the refurbishers, repairers, remanufacturers, so they can actually take back some of the products they sell, make them repair, refurbish, and they sell them again. So there are new ways of doing things. They should not be scared of the green transition, that I will be forced to sell less objects, so my profits will go down. There are ways to do it, and those ways are enabled by track and trace and having situational awareness. Where are these things that I'm leasing are, and what are their performance status? What is their location or status in terms of reparability? ICT can really make the difference in this circular business model. And ICT SMEs are more flexible to go for it.
Okay, thank you, Elias. Even to build on that as well, let's talk about digital innovation hubs as well and the role that we have. Just to highlight some of the examples Elias gave us there as well. You know, digital innovation hubs and looking at sustainable data systems as well. How do you see the deployment of digital innovation hubs in terms of ICT and the green transition? And let's bring in a little bit about the SMEs on this as well. Ivan.
Yes, I think digital innovation hub is a pretty important idea, and I'm absolutely sure that's a very important idea also for improvement of infrastructure for SMEs. SMEs will benefit from that because SMEs need better infrastructure. They need also better access to the capital, of course, but if they have better access to information, better working environment, and also if they can share their ideas, they can benefit from this new environment. So I think generally we have to talk about the improvement of infrastructure, improvement of access to capital, and also improvement of say having skilled labor force. We very often forget about the issue of labor force. I think if we talk about digital innovation hub, there is a chance to get better and reskilled personnel, which can be hired or who can be hired by the SMEs.
Thank you, Daniel. Just in terms of innovation and investment as well, you know, we're not going to stand still with this. Different companies of different sizes all need money put into innovation as well, and how they spend that money to achieve green outcomes as well as clear their market objectives as well. You know, from the policy standpoint, how are we incentivizing large and small businesses to innovate but in a green way?
Yeah, I think that part of the answer also comes by making very clearly at the highest political level where ideally, because markets decide, but where ideally they think of investing. And if you look at our climate objectives in the EU Green Deal, we all know which sectors are the hard to abate ones and where digital technology can really, really make a difference. These are the sectors where we need to achieve lots of greenhouse gas emission reductions. It's transport, it's industry, it's agriculture, it's buildings and manufacturing. Those are really very key areas where digital technology will be absolutely necessary to help people to reduce these emissions. And those are exactly also the priority areas that Elias is working on with the data measurements. So there's a complete mirroring of these objectives. So the priority areas that I've outlined are the ones that we will work on first to indeed give businesses, big or small, to some of the investment certainty that is needed. And as Elias also mentioned, the label for the sustainable investments will then also become more important. We already know where some further action is needed, but where we still believe this is doable, because if you look at some of the infrastructures that we've been talking about, unfortunately, all the energy efficiency gains by technology, according to all the studies, seem to be outweighed because we will consume more. So there will be more use of it. So it's an area where we will work on it, and we have done this already. Like the data centers, for example, have already a so-called taxonomy label. If they comply with certain requirements, they're sustainable, and the investment can also go there and count as a green investment. So that is very important. And coming back on the role of SMEs as well, I think that also the point that BEREC also made on the data-driven approach is really important here. We really want SMEs to be part of this transition. We also want them to be part of the investment that we need in all these areas that I've mentioned. And I think that the sharing of data in these common data spaces could also be really a helpful tool for SMEs to be a part of this. And of course, in a trusted environment, in a secure environment where they don't have to be afraid that the next competitor will walk away with that data. So everything that we've been doing on proposing data sharing and a fair data access will be important to empower these SMEs to be part of it, because they are the innovative house of Europe too.
Thank you, Daniel. Veronique, you wanted to follow up, and then I will go to Molly on green investments as well. Veronique.
Yes, thank you. I would like to indeed come back on the digital innovation hubs and what Ivan already put forward there. I think it's important that we also make sure that the digital innovation hubs are close to the SMEs, make sure that they have a good outreach, also cooperate very thoroughly with the SME organizations who are first in line in contacts with small and medium-sized enterprises to indeed make sure that they get access to the right technology and also get the right training for the staff, but certainly also for the entrepreneur who needs to make sure that his or her company is ready and that the new business models are considered to get a way forward.
Thank you, Veronique. Molly, just to follow up on what Daniel was saying, and then we're going to take some questions from our audience, so I just encourage you to send in your questions right now. Molly, green investments, from your company and what you see from your peers as well, what does green investment really mean to you? Is it just about the taxonomy, or do you have your own criteria for what green investment should look like, which go beyond what will actually be required?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think, for us, it encompasses a little bit of everything. Certainly, we have, areas of our business that look at ventures that do have, parameters that we want to comply with certain green elements. That's certainly important to us. Just building on what Daniel said about, emissions and just what investments can do probably from a broader perspective. I mean, we know that energy accounts for about 3/4 of EU's greenhouse gas emissions. So we know that addressing energy usage is key to reaching the Paris Agreement goals. In terms of, our role and the ICT sector being part of that solution, we've actually partnered with EY, focusing on, a report on how to mitigate energy consumption in key emitting sectors and activities such as energy, agriculture, manufacturing, and buildings. And for us, we, in a macro perspective, we've highlighted use cases for reducing emissions. So just to give you a couple of examples, on our 5G network, we see a future that has drones connected to our network. We've had use cases where Swiss farmers can analyze real-time images to detect the position of weeds and thereby reducing herbicide usage by 90%, pesticide usage by 80%. We've seen a Dutch company in the Netherlands use building management systems powered by gigabit connectivity, again, using real-time data on room, collecting data on room temperatures, humidity, CO2 levels, and being able to reduce energy consumption by up to 30% in older buildings and up to 10% even in newer buildings. So these are just a couple of examples outside of the more traditional things that you think of, such as smart transport, smart cities, that we look at our sector and ourselves ultimately having a substantial opportunity to create impact.
Thank you. Molly, just to continue on this for a moment, I'm in Brussels today, but I live in Washington, D.C., and the 5G network is substantially better than it was 6 months ago, and it will continue to improve. But it seems to me we're still far from what we could describe as a 5G infrastructure which can create smart cities. So clearly there's a massive amount of investment necessary for that to happen. But it is already apparent that the organization of society, particularly for vehicles and home heating as well, this is something which is tangible already. Now, yesterday we did an interview with the Executive Vice President of Yara International, which is an agricultural company. They deal with fertilizers, and they were saying how they use, you touched on farming here as well, how they use digital technology to help farmers plan more efficiently with the fertilizer, and the consequence of that is a massive reduction in nitrogen as well as carbon usage too. And not only that, but they're using the same kind of technology to reduce their carbon footprint in the production of the fertilizers in the first instance as well. So, from their perspective, that's investment in a green investment, not just themselves, but in farmers too. Is there a tipping point in terms of investment? Are large-scale companies, is this reaching the boardroom in a new way, and is it happening more quickly than before, or is this still a theoretical mood which is not quite actionable yet at the board level?
I think it goes back earlier to your question about 5G. So today, it's about 14% of populated areas in EU have access to 5G. So if we want to be able to drive these solutions at scale, we have a ways to go. Certainly we're further ahead on our fixed network. We're offering 1 gigabit services, to 95% of our own footprint. But I think 5G, the use cases are there, they're proving out. How far they're reaching boardrooms and how close they are on roadmaps and what investors are looking at and what the decision makers of companies are looking at. I think it's a little bit further out. And it goes back to the point about investment and making sure that, we continue to invest, our sector continues to invest, but also that we're stimulated to do so.
Okay, thank you. We are going to take some questions now as well. Please send in your questions now. If you can tell us who you are, where you're from as well, it's helpful just for some context too. Question to Daniel Mess. Fairly predictable answer, I think, but the question is interesting. The share of ICT in global greenhouse gases emissions rose from 2.5% to 2013 to 3.7% in 2019. Shouldn't we consider restricting the use of digital devices for usages that make environmental sense, for example, control of heating systems? I support the reduction of digital devices for teenagers. This would be a personal approach for environmental reasons, of course. Daniel, this is. I'm not asking you about this question because there's no way that you can say that we should restrict digital devices. But the idea of how the public sentiment can shift, and what you saw in the Netherlands example you give about the electricity prioritization as well. Are we going to see a Gilets jaunes movement which pushes back against digital consumption or the prioritization of digital energy use as well? How do you see that?
Well, it is something that we almost work to avoid. That's something like what happened in Zeewolde in the Netherlands, which I mentioned, doesn't happen across Europe. And if you see that the footprint that we have now would actually increase threefold going through the next decades, then that is an issue. But clearly, our ambition, at least at the European Commission, is that the two should go together. Our ambition is not to make these two transitions tear each other apart. We really want them to bring them together. And when it comes to the use of devices, part of the answer is really some proposals that we've already made to make sure that there's not only, the debate's not only about like which part of the phone individually can I repair, which part can I recycle. The phone should just also last longer. We should just all have devices that last longer and are durable. You've shared your personal frustration about the device use of a kid. We also have the personal frustration about that after 2 years, your iPhone has to be exchanged again because it's not working anymore. If this just simply lasts longer, if you just have the rules on that, you also limit some of these effects that we all do want to be connected and have some of these devices. So these proposals are extremely important. And also picking up on what David also said, indeed, David is absolutely right. This is not only about the energy, but I think for him for confirming that it is also about the energy. It's also about the materials, so the rare earth and the minerals that are in these phones. We do not want to cut the reliance on Russian fossil fuels in order to create a new reliance on other countries when it comes to rare earths. So we do need to work on that too, and that's why that is also a part of what we want to do with the devices, so that that the rare earths in there, to the extent that you can't expect them to recycle them, that it also does last longer, but that you can also reuse some of them later. It is a very important element of this as well.
So just to summarize, I can tell my kids basically that Franz Timmermans' guy said that they can't use their phones because it's killing the planet. Is that right? I think so.
I would hope that the story will be like your phone lasts longer, and like that you do a really good job as well. And then you need to do the parental control yourself on what they do with it.
Yeah, I'll tell you how that's working out. Okay, David, I want to bring you back to Gilles Jean as well. You wanted to mention about this as well. David, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I asked you to make a reaction because you make a parallel with Yellow Jacket, and you're right. What happens in France with the Yellow Jacket? The matter was, and the matter is already, a lot of people think they are free with their cars because our model is to make this dependence between us and the mobility only exists by cars. Your autonomy is guaranteed by your automobile. But this promise is unrealizable. It's impossible to promise everybody to have big cars and to ride it every time with a good price. And that's the matter with the Yellow Jacket. With numerics, with digital, we could have the same matter because we build new dependence. In fact, in European Union, we haven't got the resources for big development of digital. Look, we have the matter with chips. We need chips. We don't know where we can have chips. That will be the same things with the digital. And I think the good answer to this matter in European Union is not to guarantee the approvisionment of resources and always more resources and always more resources. The good answer at this matter is to control our dependencies, to don't multiplicate the connected object, to have about our children with the phone. We don't need to say to our children, we can't use your telephone, your iPhone. It's to say to our children, you will have only one iPhone during 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years. It's possible to make that. But for the moment, the economy we build is not about sovereignty. And last word about the magic 5G. With the magic 5G, we can make a new agriculture without pollution, without pesticides. Is not the reality. In fact, if we we already know how to do an ecological agriculture. We have the solutions since years and years to make ecological agriculture. And it's not with the 5G and with the big exploitation. Today, the exploitation is 200 or 300 hectares in Europe. With the digital solution, is not a real solution. But with the digital solution, what we want, 2,000 hectares of agriculture exploitation, I don't think it's a good way to make the future of European Union.
Okay, I think, well, the point I was making was yesterday that it wasn't necessarily to scale up the scale of agriculture or the level of production, but to make it more efficient and more environmentally sustainable as well. I'm not telling my kids that you're proposing 10 years for their iPhone. I'm just not going to have that conversation. Elias, you wanted to come back in again on, I've pretty forgotten. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I want to make point that David made before. I want to take agriculture as an example. First of all, we should be open to pathways that do not need digitalization. It's not a must that every solution for sustainability has to have digitalization. If there are small fields where organic farming can do just happily without precision farming, so be it. We are not tied in this twin transition that it has to be always with digital, first. Second, there are different ways to do precision farming. One, a usual way that I observe that will actually maybe get us into harmful use of digital is that we want farmers to become techies. We ask them to buy GPS for their tractor, buy at least so many drones per hectare of your field. Make sure that you stick so many connected devices in the soil to measure absorbance of the different nutrients or on the leaves of the plant. This is impossible to recuperate the direct footprint of all these gadgets. They are not skilled enough. First, they don't have resources, they don't have skills. they will not be able to use it optimally to make sure that they have a net environmental benefit of this digitalization. Instead, we should look at
on that, Elias, let me ask you on this specifically, because I think it's an interesting point. The precision farming is one thing. I totally take the point that not everybody needs this. Organic farming is also compatible with non-organic to a certain degree as well. But when we're talking about a 5G architecture which enables precision farming, it should, to my mind at least, enable the farmer to not have to get too involved in all these different dynamics. And this is where we're talking about other stakeholders. So you're working with universities, with large-scale agricultural manufacturers as well, the food production companies, that they're able to help direct the sustainability of what's taking place in the farming and allowing the farmer to just do what he or she is good at rather than be too worried about the technology. So put the technology in place, ensure the network is robust, but have that supporting team of manufacturers, researchers and producers on the other side that help leverage all that data. Is that not how we should be doing this, Elias?
That's exactly what I wanted to say. So instead of pushing gadgets on farmers, let's create an ecosystem where the agricultural product company, the one that sells fertilizers and pesticides and is incentivizing and they're marketing their products to make sure that it's used more and more every year because that's how they make profit. If they become service company and say, let's work together with the farmers and you just pay me per hectare and it's my problem to keep the health of these plants, they will minimize the use of fertilizers and pesticides because it's a cost to them. But they need a lot of intelligence to make sure that they do right things and don't actually fall back on the contract that they have. So that is a completely new way of working on it. But then there is a small print, who owns the data of all this intelligence? And there we have the Data Act where to make sure that the farmers benefit from the data acquired from their fields as well.
Thank you. I will take some more questions in just a moment. Even I wanted to build on this. You mentioned unicorns earlier on as well. Unicorns are basically, as we all know, strong horses with too much fertilizer attached. So the unicorns in Europe, we don't have many, and we struggle to see this kind of scaling up of business. Do we need to really pursue this approach of unicorns, or is it the multitude of SMEs and their resilience and their ambition and their innovation that actually outstrip the capacity any unicorns could produce in Europe as well? And the innovation, as Daniel said, the intelligence that comes out of SMEs is formative in terms of where we go with our green and digital transition as well. Which is more important, unicorns or the SME ecosystem?
Well, I think everything is important, because to have unicorns, it means to have good example that something can be successful. So from 25 most successful IT companies in the world now, there is no one European one. So this is unfortunate result. So it shows that we need to change something, and we need to create ecosystem and we need to improve business environment in order to have unicorns. Therefore, we talk about innovation hub. Therefore, we talk about improvement to the access to capital. Therefore, we talk about how to improve skills, etc. So we have to improve a lot of things on this way. But to have really some unicorn, it shows a really good example how to go ahead, and it is important example for all SMEs. So I think it is connected. Everything is connected. Definitely, we have to. Current situation shows that we have to improve business environment, and we have to improve a lot of things in digital transition, which can improve and create better conditions for companies which can grow, because we have a lot of SMEs, we have a lot of good ideas, but the problem is that they do not have really right business environment, and many of them, they realize their ideas outside of Europe. So it shows that we have to change something.
Just on the digital innovation hubs, we have a question here specifically on this from Olga Bilechenko. She asked, I would like to ask about the innovation hubs. There are clear objectives, but what are there clear objectives per industry, and what is the process to join one of those in an area of interest? Thank you for the question, Olga. Ivan, you got a quick answer on that?
Well, I would just repeat myself, but I think what we have to do, once again, improve access to capital, but we have to also invest in the right way public money. We have a lot of public money put in place, for example, in recovery and resilience facility, but I think these plans are quite different country by country. So I would appreciate really some kind of unification, some kind of standardization, not only in terms of reporting, but also how to put these sources together in order to have better results, also for digital innovation hubs.
Okay, thank you. Question, let's go to Anne-Marie for this, from Bernardo Matos from Bentley Systems. When thinking of infrastructure like electricity grids, water management systems, what role do the speakers see for digital twins as a tool to help achieve the green transition? You got a take on that, Anne-Marie?
Not on digital twins per se, I think, but we have been talking about how to enable the digital helping these smart grids, which are going to prove an opportunity, which is something different than whether it's really be realized. And I do see that, for example, my colleagues in Ireland have allocated specific spectrum specifically to manage the smart grid. So we do not have to wait for the full 5G universe to unfold. We are already, as regulators, looking at a spectrum and spectrum allocation, and also as BEREC, we're looking into making sure that that there is capacity in frequency to make sure that all these that companies that have solutions like the ones that Ilias just described, that there is a potential and that there's frequency to be used, and that there is a space to create these innovative solutions and make sure that you can bring them to the market. So I personally cannot wait for these solutions to arise, because it is the promise that we have with the new technology. But as with all promises, the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Daniel, just on standardization as well, you know, it's something I hear again from blue chip companies, their frustration at lack of standardization. They want to invest in projects in Europe. They look to the Chinese market and they have a standard there. They can put their money there. German automakers are just a prime example, Qualcomm and others in terms of IP and chip manufacturer as well. You know, why are we still hesitating when it comes to ICT standards as well? Are we just trying to get it right, or do we not? Do we just not know which direction we're going to go in with some standards, with IP decisions as well? Daniel.
No, I would not say that we're not on that ball at all, because Commissioner Breton, who's actually Ilias's a commissioner, has proposed a standardization strategy that we're now implementing, and standards for to help both the green and digital transition play a key role in that. So perhaps also Ilias can step in on that if need be, but also picking up on the digital twin point that was just made. I, by the way, also thought that what Anne-Marie just said on the way that some of these regulators are allocating spectrum, so the frequency to use for a telecom network, I think it's super interesting what she just said, that some of this can also go to these energy players that come with these smart solutions for the energy grids. I think that is really lauded, and hopefully that the type of work continues, because that immediately brings benefits to this. And digital twins are important because if you take, for instance, if you make a digital twin of the energy network, you can really predict, oh, the renewable energy needs to go in now, congestion may arise over there, we need to anticipate before it actually really happens. That can make sure that you don't have the situation right now that you have to choose between, well, a device or be connected to the energy grid. Nobody wants that result, and a digital twin can help there, and that's why we will make very concrete announcements actually on that when we come with an action plan for energy, because we really want to launch something really concrete on exactly this topic, the digital twin of the energy system.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for that. Ilias, any just supplementary remarks there on the standardization? Okay.
our biggest biggest project and initiative called Digital Twin of the Earth, where we actually trying to create a model where we can use it for environmental, climate, extreme weather conditions. So this is a big project that we just initiated as DG Connect in cooperation with others like DEFIS and Copernicus Services and others. The digital twin is something you can apply as a manufacturer to make sure that you understand how to build the best product, car, but we have enlarged it to Airbuses and to cities. And in the cities, you can have a digital twin of the transport, of the water systems, and that's where IoTs, these connected devices, 60% of the water network sometimes is lost because of leakages. ICT can really make a difference by measuring where are the problems and having kind of a real-time view of your water networks. So it's coming back to the question of the water. On the standards, this is a crucial thing. This is a critical thing that people underestimate. It's this boring thing that is kind of nobody wants to talk about, but it's a key to make sure that we actually underpin our market. Single market is all about SMEs being able to have one environment to grow. You will never get big SMEs and unicorns if we don't act like a single market. And standard is one of the necessary success conditions for that. And we do work with, of course, the European SDO, so ETSI, CEN, CENELEC, and others. But we do also see that this is a global issue. So we work with ITU and other even regional standardization offices in Asia and US to make sure that when we think green digital, we have a global agreement of what does it mean to be, sustainable ICT.
Thank you. I know that Veronique and Ivan also wanted to speak on standardization as well. Veronique.
Yes, maybe also from the SME perspective, I agree with Elias that standardization is crucial for the green and digital transition. If you, for instance, you want to go to circular economy, you need to have standards on which waste resources can be reused and can be put back into the system. On digital, I think it's also clear that standards are required. On the other hand, indeed making sure that SMEs can get into the market and remain in the market, standards have to be feasible for small and medium-sized enterprises. And that is also why SME United a few years ago already set up with several different other partners small business standards to ensure the involvement of small companies in the standardization process, making sure that the standards which are developed at the European level, national level even, and also the international level are feasible for SMEs and make sure that they can also further develop their products. And in that way, SBS is also involved in CEN, CENELEC, ETSI, and also at the international level within ISO and ITU. So I think that there, the importance of creating a market and ensuring the market for small companies is a very important element to take into account.
Veronique, thank you. Ivan?
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, I do agree absolutely with all the arguments about necessity to standardize. I just like to give you one very small but important example how standardization is important. From European Parliament, we were successful enough to go ahead with standards for the charger for all mobile phones and e-devices, tablets. So this is just a small idea, but very important for practical use and also from environmental point of view, because it will reduce waste significantly. So it is the example how digital and environmental transition go ahead together.
Thank you. Let's take another question or two as well. A remark from Pepe Polymers. Thank you. There's only something worse than training the workers and leaving. Do not train them and let them stay, said Henry Ford. Henry Ford's not online today, obviously. Are there tools that design innovative methodologies to eco-design and promote a thriving local productive model of circular economy based on the itinerant industry 4.0 model? Anybody want to have a go at that? I should leave that one with you. Elias?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I understand that. I cannot understand. I cannot agree more that if you had one silver bullet, if you say I can use digital in one area only, I have to choose. I would say digitalization for circular economy would be maybe the most powerful. People don't make the link between climate change and circular economy. The emissions of the industrial emissions are huge, and in order to do that we have a new kid on the block that we just have end of March, we adopted the Sustainable Product Initiative, the Sustainable Product Regulation. And there is a new thing called Digital Product Passport. And in order to make sure that we trace and track materials, products, that we don't lose them from the system and we reuse the material, well, we keep them as long as possible, as David was trying to make before, and Danielle, the point. But we don't lose the batteries ever from the system. So we know where this material is and we reuse it. So we are not dependent as Europe so much on the imports of these materials. We have to manage that material we have. It's a value that we're losing billions every year by not tracking, tracing, and evaluating it. Yeah.
Point. Thank you, Liz. Daniel.
Yeah, like just to also compliment on this on the SMEs and the circular economy. And I really believe that this is an area where we especially need to work with the SMEs, because it's an area where we can lead on their basis, because these can be typically like the solutions that look small scale, you know, like reuse a piece of textile rather than a piece of a t-shirt and we manufacture it into something new. And that's typically an idea that can come from an SME. And that's also why we've proposed as a crucial plan of our circular economy action plan to create a separate hub for that, even a separate hub for circular economy, coming with the skills, working with the skills to make sure that you work with the latest eco-design requirements, because let's face it, an SME should not be expected to check the website for the latest eco-design requirement. It should be just explained in a hub format. And this hub can also really, I think, help to launch really great ideas. There are many already out there. In Scandinavia, this remanufacturing of t-shirts is going like crazy, and it's very interesting to see.
Okay, I want to bring Veronica in just a second, but Daniel, just to follow up on what you said about skills there, which I think is super important. You know, we've been doing circular economy for a while. We've been doing the environmental transition for a while, the Green Deal. You know, where do skills fit in this? Are we able to observe a new set of training patterns which are needed and should be deployed in the near future?
Yeah, like, well, here you have like a distinction, I think, between the energy transition that we're all going in, because there you see that, for instance, electrification and software are like crucial horizontal skills. So software as well, that are really good skills to focus on, to teach as many people as possible, because that's where new jobs will arise. If you take the area of mobility, especially the move to electric cars, they have a lot of software, more of them than combustion engine cars, so the two can really go nicely together. So I would say electrification and software are in key focus here, because it allows people to move from sectors where it becomes more challenging to new sectors where business is booming. And I guess that Veronique will also say that perhaps on the circular part, we might have to do a little bit more work on that, but happy to take that with me as a recommendation if she says so.
Thank you. Veronique, over to you.
I couldn't do anything else but confirm now, of course, Daniel. But I think that also social partners are working hard at the moment to indeed map skills, needs and requirements on green transition, making sure that we have a good view on what are the current needs and the upcoming requirements as well towards the future. Also pushing them to get the training offer in place across Europe, and especially also in those rural areas where for us it's key to also have that local production and that circular economy going, because in rural areas there's a lot of potential to in first instance reindustrialize again, and secondly also make sure that we there create the ecosystems and the business models to really give that circular economy an additional push and give them the necessary facilitating environment to do so. So I think that striking the balance between the global economy and, on the other hand, local production and circular economy business models will be an important point of attention towards the future, with SMEs on board as well.
Thank you. Anne-Marie, in your report, your draft report, do you touch on skills in that in terms of connectivity and what's needed in the marketplace now?
No, not in this report exactly, Brian, but the skills, and especially what we call the mirror of it, digital divide, is something that is very close to our mission as well. Because I do think we have been talking about how the digital transition and how much more of our lives as workers, but also as students or as members of our family, are trying to reach out to loved ones. The skill set is, or be citizens, for example. you have to have digital skills. And I think that is that is a very important theme that we as regulators already have very close at heart. And actually what we do is we try to reach out and help people to make sure that they are going to be part of that digital future, and that they are aware and that they are able to actually participate and contribute. Because I do think that as technology advances at such a high speed, it's not just the labor force that has to keep in pace. It's also, if you look at the digital divide, that people without skills are more and more left behind if there is not an opt-out solution. So if we do more and more online, and if we think that the digital is going to be an important part, for example, why not access public services online so that you do not have to travel? It sounds like a really sustainable idea, but then you have to make really sure that your citizens are able to actually do interact with government, for example, or with public services online. So I think that the skills issue is a very crucial issue, also to make sure that we all can be part of an inclusive digital future.
Thank you. Molly, when you're talking about reducing your own environmental footprint as well, what's the skills and training and education mentality like at Liberty Global? Have you changed this, or has this always been something in terms of awareness that's been built in? Is there a new mindset to deal with this and reduce the footprint?
I think so. I mean, we're talking about a really dynamic landscape right now when it comes to ESG and environmental and green matters. I mean, we have yet to standardize even how we look at this. So, just as an example, on one hand, we're looking at upcoming EU legislation and targets here in Europe. On the other hand, as a publicly listed company in the United States, we are also dealing with, the climate-related disclosures proposal from the SEC. And so what does that mean when you have a lot of new targets, new ways of doing things, and how you wrap that into your business and really make sure that you're transparent, make sure that you're doing the right things, make sure that your stakeholders understand and are on board. So yeah, I think it's multifold. To the business, I think it's the call for digitization that we've seen over the last couple of years, particularly with COVID and just the demand on our networks and having so many activities transform to digital ways of doing things. I mean, that certainly has played a huge factor for us and the way that we're doing things and the skills that we need from our people. But then also from the ESG standpoint, this is it's a very dynamic climate, and we're focused on it more than ever.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions here. Daniel, you can hit this one out of the ballpark. Federica Bordelais, how to finance the twin transition and who should do it? Daniel.
Well, there are lots of funding opportunities at Europe, but the real reality is that both for the green transition, lots of investments need to come from the private sector, and that's why it's so important to have the right framework in place that happens. So the right labels when an investment is sustainable, when you talk about the EU Green Deal objective, and just clear directions of where you believe priority areas. Priorities are, and I believe that with unicorns were mentioned, and unicorns often are SMEs at the beginning. We should not forget that the first European unicorn that we have is Bolt, and it's actually exactly in this area that we're talking about: a digital solution for mobility as a service, connecting e-scooters with public transport and bikes, and then shared cars, and it's taking off massively in Europe. So I hope that our investment framework will continue having more of those, creating more of those unicorns.
Okay, David, you've heard a lot, which is clearly going against the grain of the direction you would like to see. Do you see that the digital revolution has a positive dynamic as well, and which can be harnessed for the green transition, which can really produce a strong benefit in the hands of the right training, the right investment strategy, the right measurement as well, and a sensibility to what people on the what citizens will actually tolerate as well. Do you think we're capable of that, David?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. You're right. I try to make another point, because for the moment I think we make a lot of dream about digital world. Digital world is a perfect world, is a theoric world, but I think we don't live in a theoric world. We live in the real world. For example, when we talked about digital during a long time, we're talking about immaterial economy. Like if we're talking about cloud, we're talking about all these things. But in fact, digital economy have very material consequences. And I think, for the ecologist, we always try to say, be careful. There is what we see, but there is negative consequences of this. I forget the word in France. In French,
Sure.
Is anyway. But there is bad consequences in the real world.
But from what you've heard today, David, the idea that the European Union is really trying to measure what's happening, not just theoretically, but actually in deployment as well. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we're going the right direction. You should you have confidence that with the right measurement that we can do this well?
To be well with digital, we need, I try to say that, to have a real analysis about the life cycle assessment of the products. For the moment, we don't make this today. We don't know the concrete consequences of the digital revolution. In the European Union, we make today about anything. When we want to move some things, there is a study to analyze slide. To make this new world with digital, no study. We don't know the consequences. The first things we said, try to make study. Second things, we make some proposition about strong eco-design to build this connected object, to make addressing mandatory environmental performance labeling, to have real looking about the impact of this object. We try to make some proposition about that, and I can answer anything about that.
Okay.
But the first thing is we need to know in which direction we want to do. I'm afraid we try to make a couple between green transition and digital transition like it's the same things. But in fact, I think it's a bad way to think.
Okay.
It's the automatical thing to make the two things between.
Thank you. Elias, just a quick comment from you, and then we're going to do the wrap-up remarks as well. Elias.
Yeah, on the last point of David, we have eco-design criteria. As Commission, we will publish eco-design criteria end of this year on mobile phones, laptops, and tablets. And those are not be only energy consumption, energy efficiency, but also material efficiency. So durability, reparability, and all that thing. So we do pay attention, and we know that the e-waste is the fastest growing waste category, and we need to do something about it. I wanted to talk about the investment a little bit to complement Daniel. It's a private-public, of course, story, but there is one powerful tool that we are not using enough, that is a public procurement. If we could agree that public procurements will become by default green public procurement, that together with the price, you're also looking on the sustainability metric, that will incentivize even further the need for standard that public procurers can trust. It would make a big difference, because public procurement makes the big statements on the markets. And on the jobs, circular economy has the potential for new jobs, high quality jobs.
Thank you. So that you answered Henk's question, the role for procurement. Thank you, Henk, for the question. Christina had asked a question which we've touched on as well. How can Postmakers stimulate more uptake of digital technologies to reduce emissions? Georgina mentioned as well the considering the limits of digital and encourage other forms of management and networks. We got to some of that as well. Ahmed asked about how sobriety fits well the agenda of the green transition. Don't drink on Fridays. I think stay sober. That's our message from Euractiv. It's we're in the Brussels bubble. We know how it goes. Thank you for all that. Now let's do our wrap up. 30 seconds each. Your soundbite, your takeaway for today. Let's start with Molly. 30 seconds.
Thanks, Brian. So connectivity is vital to creating a sustainable future and meeting Europe's energy and environmental targets. Digitization will be absolutely critical to, underpin innovations that will enable societies to become more resource and energy efficient. In this, we need to promote investments that keep connectivity able to support sustainability advancements. We need to align our measurement and reporting frameworks, understand in a consistent way where we are today and how far we need to go. And as Anne-Marie stated, we need the right people at the table, not just to make decisions, but also create the ecosystems we discussed today that will deliver positive impact.
Thank you. Ivan, over to you. 30-second wrap-up.
Thank you. I think in order to be successful, we need three major things. First one is infrastructure, second is skills, and third is legislative framework, which will stimulate private investments into all the things. It will bring a lot of good benefits. I mean, digital and green transition, like reduction of cost, improvement of our environment, but also it brings new challenges which we have to face. For example, like data ownership, data protection, fight against misinformation, and we have to invest much more into cybersecurity as well.
Thank you, Ivan. Anne-Marie.
Well, Brian, for your children, I would go for hold on to your phone for one more year. Let's take the little concrete steps. And I do think that is, I really welcome the fact that we do see that you cannot separate the digital from the green transition. It is a green transition, and we're so in agreement, but now put it into practice. And that is hard work, like standardization. It's hard work, it's nitty-gritty work, it's details, it's concrete, it's show me the business case. So I do think we need to start really making steps in practice, and I do think that we are all that in alignment and trying to make it as concrete as possible is the right way forward. And I really welcome all the energy that is apparent at this moment in Europe.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And let's go to David. David, 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you, Brian. I think to guarantee a sustainable digital economy in Europe for the Green Deal, we need three things. Ambitious eco-design standards to impose long product lifetimes coupled with appropriate legal guarantees. Second things, a clear and harmonized mandatory labeling of the sustainability of digital so that consumers can make appropriate choice. The third thing is better market surveillance, perhaps with via the digital product passports and a crackdown on premature obsolescence practice. We need, of course, to empowering the consumers, but we need legislation, clear legislation for the European Union, because the European Union make a notice for all the world, because we are the first market in the world.
Thank you, David. Excellent. Ilias, over to you. 30 seconds.
Yes, most of it has been said. So I will focus on one specific thing we didn't mention. We spent 700 billion on recovery and resilience facilities. The plans that member states send us show that the capacity and understanding of this green digital transition is not there. The green part, the 40% of the money they're spending, they are not using smartly the digitalization to green their sectors. Vice versa, the digitalization part and the money they're spending on digitalization, there are not enough indicators to make sure what David just asked for. So if we could intercept before they spend all the money by 2026 to give them quickly some proven cases And that is all of the panelists on their level of interaction with member states to make sure that they still have possibility to spend more and to deliver more to citizens from this RRF.
Okay, thank you so much. And Veronique?
Well, I think to enable this green and digital transition, we need an enabling legal framework. Legislators are working on that, and we hope that they also improve on the inclusion of SMEs. On the other hand, the facilitating environment to allow SMEs to bring those solutions for the green and digital transition and put it in place in real life. And then I refer again to the necessary financial means, the skills, the infrastructure, standards, and then the technologies. And I'm happy that Ilias also referred to it. I think making awareness even bigger on what is available, what we can develop further, and make sure that we make the connections between all the actors is key now in the next year and a half.
Thank you. Daniel, last word.
Yeah, like I started by saying that, like in this energy and war situation, ICT must go green. And I think that what I'm taking also away today is like, I think it's clear that you can only manage what you measure. We had a debate that also had quite some emotions in there on what the impact of digital technology really is on the environment. You can only manage what you measure, and that's why this work in these priority areas is so important going forward. And I think that ICT should go green, but I sense a lot of opportunities to unleash digital to help with our climate goals. And I sense also responsibility. It only works if digital technology is accountable, especially now also for its own footprint. But I sense a lot of sense of responsibility on that. And like that, if ICT goes green in this way, I think the society can go along with it.
Daniel, thank you. Solid discussion. Well done, everyone. I enjoyed this. Thanks to Daniel, to Ilias, David, Ivan, and Marie, Veronique, and Molly for super contributions today. Also, the team here sweltering in the studio with me right now, as well as Zoran. We have Tamara, who's just outside, Bonya, Agat, and I thank all the team. Tamara's here, actually, right in front of me. And to Giga Europe for their support today as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all your questions and your engagement today. I really appreciate it. If you want to watch it again or to share some of the content or clip the content, it should be available very shortly on the YouTube and the social media. Continue to engage with hashtag EA Debates as well. I wish you a very warm afternoon here in Brussels. I'm Brian Maguire. Good afternoon.